The bomber in Sweden, now we discussed this a little last week, and it was very interesting because we had two people on the panel who found it impossible to describe him as a Muslim. They kept calling him a human being, which I think was pretty self-evident, actually. He was a human being. But they couldn't say Muslim because that might make them Islamophobic. Islamist website praises the bomber in Sweden, this man who tried to murder Christmas shoppers. Al-Qaeda-linked Islamist website posts a poem praising this man as Sweden's first suicide bomber. A poem praising Sweden's first suicide bomber. What would you like to be when you grow up? Well, destruction of cities in Europe, the mother of dogs, blah, blah, blah. Now, there's a campaign, apparently we had just this morning, I think in the middle of the night actually, 12 or 13 people in the UK, in Cardiff, capital of Wales, and Stoke, in the sort of South Midlands, and in London we had people arrested planning bombing attacks for the Christmas season. We know intelligence agencies have reported there have been trial runs. So empty packages have been left in airports, and they then monitor to see how the police react to these, so they can try and get round the reaction. Oh, Tarek.
This was an Associated Press story, and the headline said 12 quote-unquote men. And I was wondering if it was the Viet Cong, or the Sandinistas, or the IRA, or the Baader-Meinhof gang.
Why are they so painfully reluctant to mention...
You tell me, Michael, you're the white man. I have no problem saying Islamists captured and will be tried. It is white liberal men and women...
Don't call me a liberal.
Yeah, I don't know where you stand on this, but I'm sick and tired that a dozen people a day are being killed in Muslim countries. A dozen a day, a minimum, in prayer centers, in prayer halls. Women are being... acid is being thrown on their faces, and yet left-wing men and women in Europe and America simply can't utter the word. And it took 3 judges of the Interior Superior Court to say to the digi-bomber, 20 years from now, you'll appear before a parole board and you will have to show whether you have given up on the doctrine of armed jihad or not. So 3 judges could say that, but not a single politician could address these terrorists and say that you needed life sentence or to condemn these 12 people.
Sir?
We're hearing about white guilt a lot in the media now, especially because of some of the things that have been happening in Ontario and Toronto. It's ridiculous. If a person sticks up a gas station and he happens to be Muslim, then yes, it's Islamophobic to mention Muslim sticks up gas station. But if somebody does something in the name of jihad, then it's completely relevant. It needs to be introduced to the subject. And the fact that it isn't suggests there's... I think it's political cowardice and political prejudice.
This is a very good point, actually. If someone happens to be of a particular background who is a criminal, and there's no link between background and crime, then why mention it? There was a time when, before the Second World War in particular, when the race of people was constantly mentioned. Italian, in terms of American organized crime, Italian, Jewish, Irish, and it was a way to say, look at these people, and it was wrong. But if someone is motivated by their religion, if someone murders someone in the name of Judaism, mention they're Jewish.
Absolutely.
It doesn't really happen very often, if at all. It happens quite a lot with people from the Islamic faith. It doesn't mean all Muslims do this, because they don't, and it's repugnant to think that.
But Muslims are the victims. We are the ones dying. It's not Western men and women who are dying.
Sounds quite reasonable, Sandra.
Well, I think the real issue here is that it's Sweden's first suicide bomber. And, you know, for people who live in North America and in Canada and major cities like Toronto, it highlights our own imagination as to what could happen here.
Sure.
And I think that's the real issue. You don't envision or think that it would have happened in Sweden. I mean, we're sort of made to think it's going to happen in
New York,
yes,
not far from here.
I know.
But what about the issue they're discussing, this reluctance to actually describe the perpetrators?
Well, I don't think that matters one way or the other, personally.
Why doesn't it?
It's an issue of an individual who's made a choice to take out others.
It's a doctrine. It's a doctrine that says that way on Friday prayers people are saying, oh God, give us victory over Christians and Jews. And there are members of parliament sitting in that same mosque saying very demurely, oh, thank you for inviting me. What has gone wrong with politicians?
Are you saying that's typical of mosques in this country?
That's it. Yeah, I have it on record now.
Well,
now
you have to have gone to every mosque to know this.
Not every mosque, but this is a ritual prayer. Now, the point is, 80% of Muslims don't speak or read Arabic. So even the congregation doesn't know. But the imams that have come here from Saudi Arabia, English educated, born in this country, gone to Saudi Arabia, trained for 10 years, come back over here, spreading hate and vile hatred against fellow Muslims.
Tarek, I want to push you on this. Is this a ritual prayer that is said and has been said since the 7th century?
Not since the 7th century, since the 9th century.
Okay.
And it was targeted against...
But it could be merely rhetorical.
Then drop it. It's hate speech.
Well, is it?
Drop it.
Is next year in Jerusalem acceptable? That's said by Jewish
next year in Jerusalem doesn't mean I'm going to murder 100 Palestinians to be there.
Does this mean that, though? Because victory over Jews and Christians, I understand the language is perhaps archaic and harsh. But does it necessarily mean that the people who say it want to kill Jews and Christians?
Michael, here's the point.
I want to be fair here.
I'll be fair. The point that many mosques have stopped using it since I've been bringing it to the attention.
Have they?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I can tell you dozens of mosques that are not funded by the Saudis who will never do this. I know of imams who have gone mosque to mosque saying, stop this nonsense.
All right.
But I know others that are funded by the Saudis and the Iranians who do this.
Well, you looked at me, Tarek, as a former politician, and why do we turn the other cheek? Well, in this city, in this country, where we have many different religions, and I have a number of mosques that were in my community and work with these people as citizens, I think that there is a level of fear through the unknown. I don't know that much about the religion. I did have constituents that attended mosque, and I don't want to be the one that's going to be out there saying there's something wrong with this group of people, and that's the worry.
No, just a second.
And that's why you don't want to say those things.
Can you ask anyone you meet, do you believe in the doctrine of armed jihad? That's not being anti-Islamic. That's saying...
But Tarek, I mean, it's not exactly hi, how are you, is it?
No.
Hello, do you believe...
No, I'll tell you
So
why.
because someone is a Muslim,
no,
you ask them that question?
No, if someone approaches a politician, and who approaches? Not your architect, not your regular cab driver. You have organized Muslim groups right at the top with the mosque leadership that approaches politicians, that looks for grants, that looks for accommodation, and that says, please validate me as the spokesperson for the Muslim community. It is incumbent on public servants to say, we know that after the Toronto 18, there's a doctrine of armed jihad.
Okay.
The 3 judges have spoken now.
What I was going to say is that politicians on the left frequently want to get to the root cause of a problem in order to address it.
On the right.
Tarek,
Well,
hold
on
on,
the right
Tarek, hold
too.
on.
But what I was saying is, on either side, if, you know, and again, this is obviously the overwhelming majority of Muslim citizens are decent people who want to live normal lives. But there are, jihad is a promoted ideology or a philosophy within aspects of Islam. And if that is the root cause, you can't address a problem unless you address the cause of the problem. And this is the cause. And just pretending it's not there, ignoring it, isn't going to help anything. So I think that's...
I do see a double standard here. And we all of us tend to look through news coverage through our own experience from the prism of our own loves or dislikes. I understand that. But it seems to me that people are identified from other religions quite readily. And the media even seem to take a particular glee if there's an Anglican priest recently involved in a paedophile issue. Well, why mention he was an Anglican? What's that got to do with the story? But it was mentioned. No, I think it was in...
priest, it does make a...
Well, he's not Catholic. But I think it's relevant. But when it's a Muslim involved in suicide bombing, that apparently is not relevant. You know it's fear.
I'm saying it is fear, and that cultivates more fear and a lack of knowledge. It's very hard for Western countries to really understand the whole rationale behind.
Why? We understood Hitler, we understood Lenin quite easily. We had PhD courses in Sovietology. We defeated the Cold War, the Soviet Empire, without firing a bullet.
Well, I can tell you why, because I can find people that basic stuff that they should know they don't know about because they're living their lives and eking out their existence.
I'll invite you to Eaton Center. Right in front of it, there'll be a man...
That's tempting.
Just a second. Distributing a book on jihad in the English language, and there's a stand where this is distributed every day. Every day for 365 days. Go there and pick it up.
That's one man. That doesn't reflect for me an entire community.
You said you couldn't find out. I'm saying that this is being distributed. You're refusing to pick it up.
Okay, when we move on, we will get back to this issue, I guarantee you.